Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare, old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in person in Whippany, New Jersey, or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. If you have children and want a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah. In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 3, Episode 5, Great Caesar's Ghost, is returning guest, Rich Roney. Welcome back.
Thank you.
This is a fun one.
This is a fun one, and I'm enjoying my journey through Season 3. Because I think I said this a few weeks ago. These are the episodes I grew up with from the time I was 5 to 12. And the town I lived in, I'm convinced they really pushed these episodes far more than, say, Season 1.
Yeah.
So this is what I grew up with as a child. So it's kind of a beautiful walk down memory lane.
Well, like you always say, that station manager was really looking out for you and your fellow youths and making sure you weren't exposed to any episodes that were too violent.
Right. I mean, like the Evil 3 or Night of Terror. I do remember when we were young, my mother had different opinions because on one hand, when my brother Charlie and I would watch these, we'd be enthralled. We'd watch every minute. But when they were over, we were so rambunctious and so wild and so hyperactive. Yeah, so it was. She got maybe half an hour of quiet.
Yeah,
but she paid for it after the credits were shown.
So in this one, Perry White appears to be losing his mind when he sees the ghost of Julius Caesar. This aired May 21st, 1955. Written by Jackson Gillis, directed by Harry Gerstad. Our guest cast is Trevor Bardet as quote-unquote Julius Caesar, Olaf Heighton as Jarvis, Perry's man, and Jim Wayward as the clerk. So, I mean, you talked about just the experience of watching the shows generally, but overall feelings towards this one?
I enjoyed this one. I remember watching this as a child. I vividly remember watching this as a child when maybe I was 8 or 9. And there's aspects of it, when I watched it, the memory came right back. Not to give it away, but late in the episode when Superman puts on the winter coat and the derby and, hey, I'm Morley. And I did get confused because Clark pronounced it both ways, Morley and Marley a few times. But I remember watching this. But watching it now when I'm 69, there were a couple of things like, oh, you guys really didn't put a lot of special stuff into your special effects, like inside the airplane and stuff like that.
Yeah. Fair. No, I like this one too. I mean, look, recently we talked about the Talking Clue episode, which focused on Henderson. Not my favorite episode of all time, but I do always like when the characters get a spotlight episode like this. And so to shine the light on Perry, to give John Hamilton a lot to do, and to tie it into this phrase, Great Caesar's Ghost, that he's bellowing all the time, was nice. Like that for a show that generally doesn't do much continuity-wise, it was nice to kind of say, okay, we're going to hit on this thing that's the sort of thing, he says it all the time, you don't even think about it anymore. But it's like, no, we're going to use that as the basis for this scheme. So I liked it. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of good stuff for us to talk about.
Didn't Perry come on the fly with another phrase? suffering jumping catfish or something like that.
Yeah. And then we're told that he said great jingle bells or something like that. Yeah. So he's always got to say something. All right. So our breakdown here. Late at night, an on-edge Perry calls Clark from his office, and they discuss how Perry is set to testify as the star witness in an upcoming criminal trial. A clerk shows up with coffee that Perry doesn't remember ordering, and he hears a ticking sound like a bomb. But Superman doesn't find anything amiss when he shows up. What did you think of this opening and this phone call conversation between Perry and Clark? Clark, who's still, even though it's late at night, I mean, you can only imagine how late, is still in his suit, fully suited up in his apartment.
He did not have his silk vest or his silk jacket. What did dismay me, and we've discussed this before, Perry does have a penchant for pounding coffee late at night.
Yeah.
Right? The Journalist Club or whatever it was. Now, what did surprise me was clearly in the background, it was like a sunny late afternoon, so it wasn't nighttime. But I do remember Perry not recalling it. But I didn't give a lot of credence to that. I mean, I just kind of got into the whole speed of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. Like right from the jump, you get a sense that Perry's out of sorts, right? And because Clark says, like, what's the matter? Essentially, the idea is like, well, why would you be calling me this late if something weren't the matter? Like, that's the only reason you'd be calling. And Perry can't remember. Like, he quickly forgets why he even called. We find out the next day he was calling him to yell at him for not having the heater moved in the office.
Yes.
Right?
Good memory. I forgot.
But like right from the jump, he's out of sorts. And Perry has this whole line about like, it's not like if I didn't work late, I wouldn't get any work done. Right? And yes, to your point, especially when that coffee shows up that Perry doesn't remember ordering. You and I, we have joked off mic so many times about that Secret of Superman episode from season 1 when Perry's at the press club.
It's like 2 a.m. and he goes, he's get 2 cups of black coffee, making sure it's hot.
Yeah. So, even though this all, of course, proves to be a scheme and he didn't order the coffee, it's like, yeah, it would track with Perry if he did. Now, not to nitpick, but if someone placed a package in front of you and you heard what you thought was a ticking bomb,
I would probably get out of there as fast as possible. Don't you think
you might just get up and walk away? It's like, bro, you're not tied to your chair. Just leave. Just leave. Don't sit there and get blown up.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's mad at Clark for seemingly hanging up on him. But of course, Clark had to change to Superman and he shows up. And I always like Superman and Perry scenes. Clark and Perry scenes are great, but I always love because it's one of the few times you get a slightly different side of Perry because he is very respectful of and usually deferential towards Superman. So I always like when you get to see the two of them.
Interesting. I didn't think about that, but I did. I just flashed back to the face and the voice, and especially Perry did have good reason to be very deferential.
Yes. Yeah, in that specific instance, but yeah, no, I always like that. And Superman's like he holds it up. He's like, no, it's just coffee. Right? He uses his X-ray vision, presumably. So, yeah. So right from the jump, we know Perry's really on edge. He's out of sorts, and I think in this scene, and then also in the next scene coming up the next day in the office, like he starts to talk about hearing a voice, but like he stops himself. He doesn't reveal like what's been going on. But there, even from these first couple of scenes, hints that he's hearing like something's off. The next day, Perry is even more irritable than usual. Turns out he'd ordered Jimmy to interview a baseball player who had been dead 30 years. Perry also yells at Clark for not having his heater moved. Clark uses his powers to do this himself after everyone leaves. But Perry comes back for his hat and sees Clark bending pipes with his bare hands. Stunned and worried he's going crazy, Perry relents and agrees to take the company plane back to his home in the country with his man Jarvis. My heart broke for Perry in that moment in particular when he sees it's one of the only moments in the episode where he's actually seeing what he thinks he's seeing, and it's the one thing where he's like, I must be crazy.
Right. Right.
Oh, this poor guy.
Now, what irked me and annoyed me was kind of Clark being so brazen, moving it, but why didn't you go over and lock the door, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, in fairness, it's Perry's office. Presumably, no one would just be walking in. Also, no one else works at the Daily Planet.
No, that's one thing. As you've invited me and we've covered, I think this is our 4th season 3 episode.
Yeah.
No one's ever in that building.
No.
I mean, Turk Jackson is the only outsider I've seen, and Professor, what's his name?
Well, at the end of Through the Time Barrier, they do pass a couple of
Oh,
people
that's
in the
right.
hallway
Two
who were
people.
like, so,
Yeah,
every
they
now and
had
then.
pretty wide hallways for no human beings ever being there.
Yeah.
The egress for fires was pretty wide.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But no, my heart broke for Perry in that moment. And it was, it's a pretty wild, rare instance of someone actually now, hey, to return to one of our favorite bits, it's a good thing Perry thought that he was crazy. Otherwise, we know where he'd be
Superman
going.
Mountain.
Yep. Make room for him. Chris White can fly him up.
Yeah. Clark would have that job of editor permanently.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, the whole theme of this, Perry being gaslighted for the entire thing. But it was so convenient. Oh, I must be going crazy. Right.
I just thought about this in the moment. Like, obviously, Clark can't let his secret be exposed, but
could you trust Perry?
Could you? Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of like, I don't know how great this looks for Clark because, they really don't know what's going on with him. I mean, before Lois and Clark enter the office, they hear him bawling out Jimmy about this interview with the deceased player. And Lois and Clark are whispering to each other and they're talking about how like he really needs to rest. Like Clark's like, I saw his man Jarvis downstairs bringing dry cleaning. Like maybe we can get Perry to go back to his home in the country with him and rest. And
that
Lois,
home must be pretty far away.
Well, and Lois is like, oh yeah, man, he could take the planet plane and be there in a few minutes. A few minutes? Like what? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like they know that Perry is on edge and more irritable than usual, but they don't know that he's going crazy yet. And so, I mean, I don't know. I guess at the point where he nearly faints and he's on the chair, I guess Clark just takes it as a win. It's like, okay, he doesn't think what he saw was real with me bending the pipes, and he's finally relenting and going to take a rest, which is what we wanted. So I guess I do get it from Clark's perspective, but it's just like, this guy thinks he's crazy because of what he just saw. Right. When he actually saw it. So
yeah. Yes. The one time, right? How convenient that Perry talked himself into, I must be hallucinating.
Yeah.
How convenient.
I know. Then he's on the plane.
Well, I was going to say, like, maybe if you need some rest, shotgunning 2 cups of black coffee at nighttime might not, if you weren't to do that, maybe you get a little more deep REM sleep.
I know. Oh, what do you make of, I mean, obviously we'll have more to say about Jarvis, but like, what do you make of the fact that he has this attendant?
This baffled me. There's 2 things that really perturbed me. Jarvis, I wondered how long has he been with Perry? Because later on, Jarvis is one of the team.
Yeah.
Deceiving and deluding and gaslighting Perry. He did exhibit some sympathy. He was concerned and sympathetic towards Perry's well-being. But I guess he was getting coin. He was getting paid. He was helping gaslight things or deny reality. But this is a one-hit wonder. We never saw the guy again. Never heard of him again.
I know. Well, it's funny because over the years, when in the rare instances where we get a glimpse of Perry not at work, we talk always about the Secret of Superman episode where he's at the press club and it's kind of unclear. Like, does he live there? Or there's just an apartment that he can use.
Yeah. Does he go in there like Monday through Thursday and go to his country home weekends?
Exactly. Then there's the season
scientist.
2. Well, we'll get to that. But then there's the season 2 episode where I think it's Jimmy Olsen, boy editor. I think that's the one where it's that really random opening about him having insomnia. And then he goes and eats like a giant turkey leg and a bowl of clam chowder and has a cigar in the middle of the night.
Oh, I got to watch that.
Once again, it's like, no wonder you can't sleep. But there it looked like he was in an apartment. So yeah, now we're established that he has his home in the country. He takes the company plane to and from. And yeah, he's got this guy. I mean, yeah, to your point, it's like, we're not given enough to know, was Jarvis a recent hire and he was a plant by this gang all along? Or had he been in Perry's employ for a long time and they turned him? I do think it's the latter. And I think it's for the reason that you said, where he does express sympathy, right? Which we'll get to. So my read on this, based on what limited information we're given, it's like, yeah, I suspect he's been working for Perry for some time, but then they turned him with the allure of money and the promise that Perry wouldn't be hurt.
See,
and that's probably why. I mean, like, or do you think?
I think the opposite.
You think like that he was just hired?
I thought he was perhaps a recent addition.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
And maybe he took care of Perry. You know, they hired him to take care of the country house, so to speak. But he had an element of sympathy or compassion. But how do you manipulate all that? Like, hey, I'm looking for someone to take care of, to be the caretaker of my house when I'm not there. This did intrigue me. I was baffled, like, how long has he really been with Perry? That question.
We're just not told. And I mean, it could have been the sort of thing where Clark is like, oh, I saw his new man, Jarvis, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. But we're just not told. So we don't know. I think either one could be plausible.
To your other point, they're not really conscious of their ecological footprint by flying back and forth in a few minutes. I mean, wouldn't it take longer to get the plane up?
Well, yeah, exactly. On the plane, Perry's rest is disturbed by a disembodied voice calling to him, and he opens the door of the plane in search of its source. Thankfully, Clark was watching from the office below, and Superman rescues Perry, though he cannot find any sound equipment on the plane with his X-ray vision. I know where you're going with this. Go for it.
That annoyed me so much, right? Because the voice was prominent. The voice was the catalyst for what was occurring. I was kind of impressed at how threadbare the airplane door was. I mean, they didn't put a lot of production value into that. But the fact that Superman couldn't find any electronic equipment, they never explained that.
No, that bothers me because when we get to the end of the episode, it's like, you see how they go about it at Perry's home, but yeah, on the plane, what were they doing to achieve this? Exactly,
and they never answered that. And as the fact that Superman couldn't discern anything with his X-ray vision was problematic. That was just like a frustrating lack of logic.
Well, it's the sort of thing because Jarvis is the one who says like, oh, maybe there's some sound equipment, right? And that's what prompts Superman. And I guess you want to do that so that you divert suspicion from Jarvis, right? Like he's coming up with actually a very plausible line of inquiry here. So it makes it seem like, oh, he couldn't be in on this, right?
Was Jarvis flying the plane?
But that's the problem then, because it's like, okay, so we're trying to divert suspicion away from him, but then there's no explanation for this. Like, how did they do this?
Unless they threw it out the window of the plane.
I don't know. Or they had it in lead or something. Like I needed a line somewhere where it's like, oh, and we had the recorder in that lead box. Something. But we're never told. That's a plot hole.
That was that annoyed me. That caused my suspension of disbelief to stop.
Yeah. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Single Bound is a new podcast series hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and follow the show on Instagram at Single Bound Podcast. My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue, Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Whether you're an independent filmmaker or you just love movies, don't miss these New Jersey film festivals. Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, and Round Reel in Bloomfield. Submission information for filmmakers can be found at filmfreeway.com. All right, now finally we see this country home. At his home, Perry hears the voice again and finally sees the white-faced ghost of Julius Caesar on his patio. The ghost asks what Perry wants from him, as he's invoked Great Caesar's ghost 1 million times over the years. Perry brings Jarvis out to see this, but the ghost is gone, and Jarvis claims he can't hear him. So, yeah, what was your impression of this presentation of Julius Caesar?
Well, as a child, watching the show so much and hearing that catchphrase, and even reading comics where even in the narrative of the Action Comics and Superman stories, this was Perry's go-to phrase.
Yeah, for sure.
So it seemed intriguing. It seemed intriguing. Look, when I was like 6 or 7, I was wondering, geez, could this be real? Right? You know, could something mystical have happened? I'll go off on a rabbit hole or a non sequitur for a moment. It was amazing to see Bedemillion Butler doing another role. I mean, because he was so different in Bedemillion Butler. He had the big handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
Here, that actor, Trevor Bardette, I've seen in a number of other things. But this was a departure. That he was clean shaven. He had the makeup on. He played it over the top enough to make it intriguing. A couple of seconds after the thing we're talking about right now, I was so impressed with John Hamilton and his line when he's like sitting down in the chair, and he was so scared and disheartened. Like, what's going to happen to me now? You know, he as an actor, he did a good job just conveying that line. Like, what's going to happen? What have I done now? You know, and he was so dismayed. That resonated with me, just the fear he was experiencing and how he conveyed it. I
agree. No, he was great in this. And because you really felt, you really felt this guy losing his mind or thinking that he's losing his mind. And it's, Superman has a line later where he's like, you know, he's just exhausted and confused, right? And it's true. It's like he hasn't been able to sleep. He purposely has been avoiding his home because thus far he's only heard the voice at his home. And then when he starts to hear it on the plane, then it's like, oh no, like now he's getting everywhere.
Away from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now? He was so demoralized.
It's funny. This Caesar, there's a pretty like pedestrian quality to him. It's like they don't do anything, the show itself, but also the characters in the story. Like they put him in the costume and the makeup and whatnot, but there's nothing in terms of like lights or sound effects to try to make him seem more ethereal.
No, he just shows up in the backyard.
But there's something like oddly amusing and charming about it. And I love the hook of this where he's like, you call to me all the time. What do you want? Like, I'm here. Like I don't know. Or it just seems more plausible. Or you get why maybe Perry could even entertain that this is a thing. It's like, yeah, you call out to him constantly.
And I thought from a humorous standpoint, when Perry tries to pivot and on the fly come up with jumping, suffering catfish or something like that. and this guy goes, hey, be careful. They're smelly, slimy creatures.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny.
That was funny. And even just to see like where Perry is in that scene on the patio where he says Great Caesar's ghost. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Right. Like invoking his name while he's right there. Yeah. It was good. And it's, to your point though, about, not knowing where this is going, like, especially when you're watching it for the first time as a kid, through the time barrier, you might feel like anything's fair game. Like maybe it could actually be a ghost. We travel to prehistoric times.
And listen, in some of the Silver Age books I read as a child, and I think we covered this a little bit maybe on one of the Superboy discussions. There was one thing where Superboy goes back through the time barrier. He was able to do it, right? And goes to like King Arthur's time and he does other things. Well, there were times books I read where Hercules and Samson came to the present day. So as a child, at first blush, the first time ever when I was 6 or 7, I thought maybe this is real, right? A million times there must be some. This wouldn't have played with the Anti-Superstition Club, but some magical number, some magical number. Yeah. And then to find out later on they're gaslighting him to destroy his credibility to be a witness. I know we really didn't see Henderson in this thing much.
He'll make his appearance shortly, but yeah, not much along the way here. By the next day, Perry has announced his retirement and Clark has been installed as the new editor. An agitated Henderson is worried that Perry's testimony will be worthless now. And Jimmy wonders whether this could all be a plot to discredit him.
Yeah. Now, doesn't Henderson feel like an idiot when Jimmy's the smart one?
Yep. I know, because it turns out Henderson has gone out to brief him about the testimony, and Perry's talking about seeing a ghost, and Henderson's like, well, they're going to ask him what he saw. He's the star witness, and then they're going to ask him, have you also seen a ghost? And his credibility will be shot. Yeah, I mean, good on Jimmy. I really was so proud of Jimmy in this moment, because it's like, all right, man, this guy's got a clue.
It's so atypical for Jimmy. I mean, if I were Henderson, I would have resigned then. Like when Jimmy's the voice of reason.
I know. Yeah, well, not the first time where I think where Henderson's investigative powers has left something to be
Jimmy's
desired.
your standard bearer.
There's also a humorous moment, right, where Jimmy calls Clark Chief, and he's like, "Now, don't call me Chief," right?
Now, that was my favorite moment. Just Clark's authority. Don't call me Chief, right? And I thought that was respect for Perry. But also, that was Clark. I don't want to be pigeonholed into this thing. But I wish they would have unpacked that. In today's modern times, it would have been intriguing to have a few episodes where Clark has to be the editor. Yeah. I would have loved to, if you could take circa 2025 sensibilities and go back in time and kind of do a few episodes where Clark had to, as Clark, work in that role. I would have loved it.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we've seen versions of this across time and media. There was a story on Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. On that show, it was Great Shades of Elvis. That was Perry's catchphrase. But there was a story where Lois took over for Perry temporarily, and that created some tension in the marriage with Clark. She was now his boss. There was a storyline in the Triangle Era comics in the 90s where Perry White had lung cancer and he had to step down temporarily, and Clark became editor. And it was exceedingly difficult to balance his responsibilities with Superman and running the paper. And currently, right now in the comics, Lois is editor-in-chief because Perry had a heart attack and then ran and won the mayoral race. So we have had stories in other forms of either Lois or Clark taking over. And I think it is interesting and can be explored. I agree with you. It would have been nice to see this play out for more than literally one scene.
Just to see how George Reeves would have dealt with it. Because he is authoritative. He's decisive.
This could at least an episode. I think at least an episode.
I would have liked that to see how he can't run to the stock room, right? Or he's got other stuff going on where he's got meetings. I would have liked to let them unpack that a little bit. And even for one episode, I think it would have been cool. Instead of Jimmy being editor for a day, from a responsibility standpoint, Clark being assigned.
Yeah. I mean, really, I think Lois would have been even more interesting, and to kind of play with that dynamic. I mean,
get a new hat.
Yeah. Well, again, in that era, probably, but that I think would have made it even more interesting. But so it goes. Jimmy and Superman separately journey to Perry's home and hear the ghost from outside. Inside, Perry has fallen asleep. And finally, Jarvis, quote unquote Caesar, and the clerk who delivered the coffee in the beginning all come together and converse in league together. Superman and Jimmy try to convince Perry that the ghost is not real, but at this point, he doesn't believe them. It's pretty dire at this point.
Pretty dire, yeah. It really does show how
they wore him down, yeah.
Yeah, mentally he had been just decimated.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That was an effective scene. Ultimately, Superman confronts one ghost with another by dressing up in an overcoat and derby hat to imitate the deceased leader of the gang. The criminal trio reveal themselves, Jimmy records everything, and Henderson makes the arrests. A relieved Perry lets out one final...
Great Caesar's ghost. Now, as a child, and this when I was like 6 or 7, I vividly remember George Reeves putting on the winter coat and the derby hat, and even talking to the three guys down there. This is Marley's coat, isn't it? I must be Marley. This is Marley's hat, isn't it? I must be Marley, And the way he was able to fly up and give the illusion. Yep. So
and withstand the bullets, which they think passed through him.
Yeah. I was so impressed with that as a child. And, but also watching it now, George Reeves seemed to have so much fun, smiling, this must be, I must be Marley, and just playing with it.
Yeah. That was a fun payoff. Like, give them a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I wondered, and this is just between you and me.
And our audience.
After season 1, with Betamillion Butler, is this what happened to him? Did he want to was he vindictive? Was this a vendetta? I was just curious about that. And it was only when they rolled the credits did I realize, holy cow, this guy appeared in 2 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, this was a strong one. I was looking forward to rewatching it and having the discussion. Is there anything else you want to say before we give our rating?
No, my 2 favorite scenes, just to be real crisp, were Clark at one point forcefully, don't call me chief. I really liked that. And that triggered, I would have loved to have seen him work as the editor for a little bit. But then also kudos to John Hamilton, that one thing when he was so fraught and just wiped out and just so demoralized. What am I going to do now? Because he was on his last gasps.
Yeah.
So I thought he did a great job from an acting standpoint. Those are my takeaways from this.
He really did. And so now this season we've been using our rating system that is the title of this episode, Great Caesar's Ghost. So how many Great Caesar's Ghosts would you give this one on a scale of 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it 3.
3? Okay. Previously you've been slightly higher than me. I'm going to give this one a 4. I'm going to go 4 on this one. It's not, there's at least one coming up that I know is going to be a 5 for me. So I kind of have that scale in my head.
You got that in your mind. Okay.
But yeah, I'm going to go 4. I think probably coming into this, I would have said 3, but as we were talking through everything, like this was, they did an effective job of setting all of this up. So I'm going to go 4 for Great Caesar's Ghost.
You're giving it a 4.
Yeah.
Even with the problems with the sound equipment on the plane.
Yeah, that is bad. I mean, I could dock it some more for that, but that's okay. I'll let that slide. But okay. Yeah, that is I don't disagree. That is a problem.
Okay. To be frank, this is the 4th episode we've had the pleasure I've had the privilege to dissect and analyze. This is my favorite of the 4 we've reviewed so far today.
Right on. Well, you will be back for more episodes later this season. I can't wait. So I thank you as always. I look forward to future discussions. And of course, we'll be continuing next week as we make our way through season 3. So make sure you come back for that. And until then, as always, only Superman can do super things. Support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Links are in the show notes. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today.